Hey everyone, welcome back to Aegis Moto Adventures. In last week's episode, I started to talk about what makes a really good dual sport motorcycle. And is there any motorcycle out there in which you can purchase that will get you everything you need? And the answer to that was sadly no. And at the end of the video, I introduced you to the new motorcycle that we've got in the stable, and that's the Honda 300L Rally. This is a really good bike, but we have heavily modified it to meet our needs. And in this video, I'm going to do a part one on what those items we've changed on the bike are. So that'll give you a little idea of what you're looking at if you decide to get this motorcycle. The first thing we did was with the OEM seat, which this one is not, and I'll get to this later, was there was a strap that goes across here for a passenger. And Sherry found that that was in the way. So I removed that from the OEM seat because at the time we didn't know if we were going to need to get a different seat or not. The next thing I did was remove the OEM factory 2mm plastic skid plate that was on the bike. I didn't think that was big enough for what we were after, but because we're trying to keep the bike as light as we possibly can, I went ahead and installed an AXP-Racing 6mm skid plate here. There's no doubt aluminum will be tougher, but it adds more weight. And since we aren't doing any really crazy stuff, I'm hoping the 6mm plastic will work just fine for us while reducing the weight of the bike. The next thing I did was I removed the OEM foot pegs and put on the Mark IV Pivotpegz. And these Pivotpegz, if you're not familiar with them, rotate a little bit forward and backward depending on whether you're going uphill or downhill. Also, when you're riding long distance, if your peg is flat, then your ankle is highly bent. And I find that pretty fatiguing. Whereas with these Pivotpegz, it'll just rotate forward and relax your foot just a little bit more. This is a foot peg that I've been really wanting to try long distance for quite a while now, and we're going to do that. We're going to give these things a shot. So far, my first impressions and just minor riding is that they work as advertised, and I really like them. The next thing I did was I went ahead and removed the passenger foot pegs. We're never going to ride this bike two up, and so there was no need to have it. It's just something we can get off the bike that helps reduce the weight for the other things that we're going to be putting on. Also, you will notice here that the rack system also mounts to the same location. I also removed the OEM toolbox that sat in this location here. That had to be removed in order to facilitate the rack system. However, I think I would have gotten rid of that anyhow. And if by chance you watch any of Itchy Boots videos, very nice young woman, great adventure, but her toolbox kind of took a beating, and for me there's probably a good reason to remove that and do something different. I've also installed the Outback Motortek Pannier Rack system. And you can see I've got the asymmetrical one here, meaning that this side is closer to the bike than the rack system on the muffler side of the bike. These are really high quality, well-built pannier racks, and they're every bit worth the money that you might spend on them. I've also installed the Moto Pumps GPS clamp mount. It's this little Duralon piece here that clamps onto the bar here that is the factory bar here. And what that allows you to do is go ahead and mount your GPS mount, which this is the amps mount for a Garmin 680T GPS unit. So this allows me to get the GPS unit mounted right to this bracket, tuck it in nice and tight. It should be anti-vibration because this is Duralon here. It was easy to install, and this keeps the GPS below the window, and it makes it easily to view. The next thing I did was I removed the OEM weights that were in the end of the handlebars. I'm pretty sure those are there for vibration reduction, and I removed the OEM handguard system. I then installed the Zeta aluminum handguards And these are bike specific, and the ones for the Honda 300L fit perfectly and work great. I then also installed the plastic handguard portion of it here, and they sell these separately, which I think is a little bit of a scam here, but basically they're allowing you to customize it while they make more money. I removed the handlebar tap clamp right in here, installed the Zeta 30mm risers. 30mm is the highest you can get with the current cable system set up on the bike without having to redo the cable system. This raised the handlebars just a little bit higher for comfort. I've also added a USB charging port because we run a lot of electronics, our phones, GPS. I went ahead and added that, and that's a little tricky to wire, which is the wiring goes back, harness goes back down in here. Excuse me, I didn't have the camera down low enough, in behind here. So I wired in behind here and then on up. I also had to wire the GPS mount in, and I wired that up separately from the USB so that we wouldn't run into amperage issues. The extra cable that I had, let me see, I got a little bit of shadow here, but if you can see it here, the extra cable I had for the mount, I just wound it up in here and zip tied it so it's tidied up and out of the way. One of the pieces of equipment that we've added is this giant loop tank bag. I've really become a fan of giant loop tank bags, and there's some reasons why. One of them, I like how they strap up front and down along the sides. It makes it completely customizable for about any bike you have. Also, this zips off and you can rotate it sideways to get to the gas cap and gas tank for fuel ups. And if you so choose, you can zip this all the way undone and take the tank bag right off the bike. This is a really nice feature, and I really am high on these tank bags. I've made some custom toolkit mounts that mount here and here, which is basically off the top mounting system for the rack system. One of the things I found just from a practical purpose is a lot of times out on the road when we need tools, you've tucked them away in an accessible place like the bottom of your panniers, and you have to take everything out of the panniers to get to your toolkit. And I wanted to avoid that with this particular bike. I wanted to make sure that I could get to the tools easily and without having to undo anything else. So I went ahead and bought this dry spec tool tube. And I've been able to get everything I think I'm going to need for this bike in this tube. Now I might find some other things at some point that I need to put in there, but this has worked out really well, and it was an easy install except for the custom mounts here. The whole weight of this whole package, including tools, is 2.5 pounds. So I was able to keep the weight really, really low. This bike build was about making the bike the lightest we could possibly make it. Now, just to touch on what I've got in the toolkit, I've got 2 Tusk wrench and tire iron combo sets, which have a 24mm and 12 and 13mm wrench. I added 3 thin wrench combos, a 14 by 17mm wrench, a 12 by 10mm wrench, and a 9 by 8mm wrench. I added 2 metric Allen wrenches, 3 and 4mm, and 5 and 6mm. I added 3 size Phillip and straight head Allen screws, and I've added a slide tune patch. Also, the original toolkit that came with the bike is in there also. There's one other thing that I've got in here, and that's the Pivotpegz repair kit. It comes with a little repair kit in case you need to do the bearings and lube it up again. So that kit is also in here. In fact, I think I even put a little bit of an extra chain, and the chain breaker kit is in here also. Well, that's it for part 1 of this bike build with the Honda 300L Rally. Come back next week for part 2, where I'll continue on and conclude with this series of what we've done to modify this bike, put upgrades on it, and all the accessories we're putting on it. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching. Take care.